Welcome to the Aiki Dojo Podcast. I am David Ito, Chief Instructor of the Aikido Center of Los Angeles, and with me is...
And I'm Bill D'Angelo, also from the Aikido Center of Los Angeles.
So what are we going to talk about today?
So the proposition today is failure a better teacher than success?
Is failure a better teacher than success? I think so.
Yeah, but I have a question first. What do we learn from success?
Nothing.
Nothing.
You'd have to be a very special person to learn from success. Like a Kobe Bryant over Michael Jordan. The normal person only revels in the win, the W. They don't think about, but I should have moved my leg. I should have kicked farther. I should have kicked harder. I should have scored that touchdown when I had a chance. I should have passed the ball. Most people post-mortem don't think about it. They go, hey, I got the W.
They're excited and they move on.
Yeah.
Because the one thing I was thinking before we got into the failure part was, what about the very small local concept of success, of like doing it right? Like you do learn something from when you get something right. Like there is a feedback loop, especially in a martial art, right?
Yeah, but you have to be a special person that if you got the W, and you can still go back to the drawing board.
Right.
Most people, they got the W, they're good. They move on. Yeah. Only the very special person wins, but still is upset about their performance. See, a martial artist, that's a true martial artist. Even though you won, they say that you should tighten your helmet straps
after victory.
After a victory, because, when you think you're safe is the most dangerous place.
Right.
So, that person who wins doesn't necessarily reflect on the win.
And there's the danger when you win and don't reflect of hubris.
Yes.
So how do you, before we get into the failure part, because I'm still interested in this, of why success works or doesn't do, why do you think it's, for all of us, there's the risk of hubris with success? What is it about victory or doing something right that leads people to not see the whole picture?
Well, it's because you won, right? A W is a W. Take the W.
Right.
Right. And so you're going to go back to the drawing board. You're going to change your swing. You're going to change your free throw. You're going to change this thing. You won.
Right.
So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So it's only like the super highly evolved champions that can win like 3 in a row and say, not good enough. Got to find a better way to improve.
Right. That's the martial artist mentality. You have that martial artist mentality is about self-improvement, self-development, more, improve more to the nth detail.
Is that hard to teach?
It's almost impossible to teach because you have to be that type of person. I can tell you all day long that even though you got the W, you still got to work on some things.
People will ignore you.
They'll say, you're fired. I mean, look at Mike Tyson at his heyday. He had all these yes men around him.
Right.
Right. So that's the thing is that success breeds this hubris, this ego, and pride cometh before the fall.
Yeah, sets you up for a disaster.
Yeah. And so that's the hard part about a person who only solely focuses on victories and successes. How much is enough money to make? How many victories is enough victories?
Is there anything that you find illuminating about success or victory?
No, most people, it's even myself. You start making good money, you don't reflect on how to be better at your craft. You're already making good money.
Right.
You're already good at something. How do you have that inside of you to go back to the drawing board and work on that little thing?
So I was listening to a podcast in the last 2 weeks by Chris Williamson, who I know you and I have talked about. And he has this one quote, I forget, he might have been interviewing Goggins. And he says, the magic is in the work you do with what you want to avoid. And it seems tied into what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking to one of the students the other day, talking about life, martial arts. It's all about the conquering of fear, right? To the confrontation of fear. That thing which scares you is the direction you should go.
Right.
Because if it doesn't scare you,
it doesn't challenge you.
Right. If you just go, I can go and do that. I can score those goals. I can do those things. You want to switch genres. You want to switch sports, switch martial arts just to make it interesting.
Right.
Right. Like when Didier Boyette Shihan was here a couple weeks ago, he was telling us that there was a time where Mitsusuka Sensei of Musou Shinden Yaido was drawing from the right. So he took the sword, put it on the right, and was drawing from the right.
So he was doing a left-handed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you go, whoa, that person could do that thing. There was these stories about Tarao Tiger Mori, the famous kendoist, who could draw the sword, 2 swords at once, cut the wada, and then put it back in the scabbard, smoothly. You think, who can do stuff? But I mean, like, that's
the level.
That level where your good is never good enough. It must be great.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the video that you sent me, and we've talked about it on the podcast many times, but I still think of it, is the Eighth Dan documentary of Kendo. These several Seventh Dan Kendo masters who are preparing for the Eighth Dan exam. And I remember, because you and I spoke about this, that apparently the passage rate was around 1%.
Yeah, like it's 1.5%.
So let's say it's 98.5% failure. And yet they go back every year to continue to refine their technique. And one of the things that really, inspired me about that was that they were trying to perfect their cut. Yeah. And the spiritual aspect of the cut, and the judges were looking at that more than the victory in the match. And I thought, wow, that's pretty high level.
I think someone in the video, he won the match but lost
the exam.
Yeah, but blew the exam. But that's the idea of striving towards success. You get into this place where success is the only thing, the win is the only thing.
Right.
And with the loss comes depression.
And reevaluation.
Well, no, if you don't make it,
right,
you think, I'll never make it, and then you quit. Because your journey is not to lose, your journey is to win.
Right.
Right? If you solely focus on success, you run the risk of failing. And then when you fail,
you're not prepared for it.
You're not prepared to fail. But if you have the mindset that failure is the roadmap, right? The failure teaches you something. It shows you that you need work here. That the best thing that ever happened to Tiger Woods was that he got caught cheating on his wife, and then he has to reevaluate his life.
Recreate himself.
Yeah. Or else he would just keep going on the same jerk that he was before, which I heard, it's been several years now, but I hear he's still a jerk. Right? It's like,
but he did a couple times. He totally rebuilt his swing.
Well, he rebuilds his swing all the time, but him as a human being, though.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you could become a better human being because you got caught.
I mean, one of the things I think that the other takeaways that I had from the Kendo Eighth Dan documentary was that, in a sense, getting the Eighth Dan was almost immaterial. It was the process of training for it. And at the end, like you said, the guy who won the match didn't get promoted, but the one who didn't did get promoted. And so it's interesting because it posits this proposition that it's not success, which is the goal, it's self-development.
Right. And that's what people today don't really want to think about, right?
Because it's hard.
Yeah, because, William Butler Yeats said it takes more courage to look inward than it does to engage your opponent on the battlefield. Right. And so, look at all the comments on this podcast and all the shorts that we do. Aikido, you should just do BJJ. It's more effective. It's effective. It's effective. Effectiveness is really just your ego, right? The most effective thing is a gun. So, I mean, if you think about this idea that you should only go for wins, effectiveness, you're missing the point. The point is to develop yourself as a human being.
Right.
Right. And so failures, they teach us so many things that you can't learn with success.
I mean, I'm born and bred in a Western culture. It does seem that if you look at the range of self-help books out there, so many of them are about success, how to get success, why you're not getting success, the techniques for success. How do you, as a martial arts teacher, how do you inspire people that the journey is about self-development and not winning? You
almost can't. You have to hope that person comes in already with a self-development appetite. If they have the self-development appetite, then they're going to try to develop themselves. Martial arts, Aikido more specifically, is one of the greatest self-development tools that people are not utilizing. But how do you tell someone that? Here's a tool that you're going to use and practice upon for the rest of your life. You mean I'm never going to be complete? I'm never going to win? No, you're always going to find something to work on to the nth little degree.
How did you find that in your own training?
I've always been this way.
Always been this way.
I've always been a voracious self-developer. You know, in the 80s, I used to buy tons of self-development books. But I don't know if I ever talked about this on the podcast before, but one of the things I used to do before self-development books were really popular is I would read the telephone book. Because in my area, the telephone book would put these inspirational quotes
inside the listings. Yeah.
Yeah, to create filler. Right. And, you know, like one of my favorite ones was when you're down on your luck, fight one more round.
Yeah. When
your opponent has knocked you down and you can't get up, fight one more round. Right. And like, you have to kind of be that person. And not everyone is a person who wants to develop themselves.
Right.
Right. If Yates is correct and it takes more courage to look inward than to fight people.
Aren't gonna do it.
Yeah. No one's going to do it. So that's the thing. You have to get to this place where you desire to know yourself. You desire to develop yourself into a better human being.
Sounds almost like a philosophy.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, and then is self-development the philosophy of Aikido?
Maybe.
Hard to say. A lot of what we read as the philosophy of Aikido was generated by John Stevens.
Right.
Right. So
interpreting the Japanese culture.
Yeah, and Sensei. So it may or may not even be wholly correct. It could be very correct, but slightly correct, but we don't really know.
It could be a knock-on effect.
Right. So, but the thing is that you want to sit back with yourself and say, what do I want? Do I want to gouge people's eyes out? Do I want to beat people into the ground? Or do I want something more for my life? I just want to not get mad in traffic. Right. And you spend all this time working on that. So, but if you think about this idea of failure, right? Failure teaches us success. So here's like a quote from Muhammad Ali. Success is not achieved by winning all the time. Real success comes when we rise after we fall. Some mountains are higher than others. Some roads steeper than the next. There are hardships and setbacks, but you cannot let them stop you. Even on the steepest road, you must not turn back. That's
wow.
A quote by Muhammad Ali, right? Talking about this idea that failure, setbacks, they teach us things. How do you learn humility if you have the win and you won the prize money?
And you never lose.
You are very humble when you lose, you don't have the prize money, and you're a little bit hungry.
Right. I have a question about how failure works as a teaching tool. What are the psychological benefits from experiencing failure? Not the depression, but what are the things that we learn as psychological techniques or hacks that if we're listening to our failure, what is that mechanism for change, especially at the psychological level?
The hardest thing about failure is you have to realize it's not personal. If you internalize it personally, then it's a slight against you. And you made a mistake, you lost, you're a bad person.
And it damages your ego.
Right. But if you look at failure, it's just a thing that happens. It's just a 2 + 2 = 4. Oh, I failed. Wonder what happened. Wonder what this thing is. Why did I miss that last
free throw?
Why did I miss that last touchdown pass? How come I didn't jump? And then you look inward and then you realize, oh, I must have been afraid. I must have been this. And then the next time you go back out there, you confront that thing, whichever confronts you.
So I know you wrote about this. It sounds to some extent what you're talking about is the character trait of resiliency.
Yeah, resilience is the ability to bounce back, right? So if we think about this idea that self-compassion versus self-esteem. Self-esteem is the wall that we build that
protects our ego.
Protects us from being attacked, from being destroyed. But what happens when that wall crumbles? It crumbles, We lay down, we cry, and then we go to an island and, we lick our wounds and then we make a comeback and we rebuild that wall. That's self-esteem. Self-compassion is as the wall is breaking and the Huns are surging through the thing, you go, I'm not a bad person.
Right.
I'm working and doing my best, and you rebuild the wall as it's breaking. Self-esteem is only a wall. It cracks, it breaks, it's broken, you rebuild it after the invaders have left. Self-compassion is you go, well, I'm not a bad person. I did my best. I really got to work on those free throws. And you rebuild the wall while it's breaking.
Do you think that they're, in the way Sensei and Second Doshu and then later the leaders of Hombu Dojo, that the way Aikido is practiced in this sort of semi-formal kata where you exchange being, in some sense, the victor versus the defeated person, is there a psychological lesson in that dynamic?
I don't know if it was intentional. Some people say like, Sensei said, you've never seen my real Aikido. And perhaps this real Aikido is in the ability to take ukemi. And that because he's older now, you've never seen him take ukemi. Like there are no videos of Sensei taking ukemi.
Right. Which he must have.
Yeah, to get to that level, right? But we get to this place where we think about like the give and the take, right? And that most people that do martial arts, they never think about being the uke. So when you watch Aikido, you don't look at the guy being thrown. You look at the guy who throws or the girl who throws. And you go, that's what I want.
That's where the drama and excitement comes from. That's a great throw.
Oh, man, that was so cool. Right? You don't think, that was really cool the way that person took ukemi.
Right.
I mean, unless you're an ardent follower of Aikido, and then you go, wow, that was some great ukemi. But most times you don't even see the ukemi. You just see the spectacular technique that the person did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I also think that maybe one of the locus points of the misunderstanding of Aikido is misunderstanding. If you're not inside Aikido, you misunderstand ukemi.
Right, and then when most people start doing Aikido and they get to be thrown down, they go, what was that?
Right.
I didn't sign up for this. I want to be the guy throwing down. I don't want to be thrown down. And then that's where like maybe people quit because their expectation, what they thought was going to happen was not to be thrown down.
Right.
And then they go, I have to give and I have to get. Maybe I quit.
We don't want to do that.
Right. But that's the thing it's a metaphor, right? You get thrown down, you have to get back up. And you always get back up one more time than you're thrown down.
Right.
Right. And then you change partner. You change roles. Right. So then that's the thing is that you teach yourself from a moving metaphor that when someone throws you down, you have to get back up. And then that's how you're building this resiliency without realizing you're building resiliency because you had to get back up.
Now, I know that like sometimes in class, you do teach the ukemi, or maybe if it's a technique we haven't done in a long time, and people there might not know the correct ukemi. But when we teach, we generally are not teaching the ukemi.
You should be. Everyone should be. It's this. If people want to speed up the class, they should work on the ukemi,
so people can take the speed and force.
Yeah, and then the speed and the power and the strength of the class improves. All you did was improve the ukemi. Right. Because you can only throw as hard as the person can take ukemi.
You mentioned fear. I think that there's an element of that there too, though. Like if people are not confident in their ukemi, speeding the class up, forgetting the aerobic aspect to it, but people get afraid, right? They're like, I can't take this technique. That person roughed me up.
Yeah,
I don't know how to protect myself. Yeah.
And so you get to this place where it becomes a metaphor. Being thrown down and getting back up. Having someone crank your wrist but not, turning the other cheek on them.
Right.
Right? And then, like today, one of the students got poked in the eye. And I said, don't get mad. What happened?
Right.
And he said, I don't know what happened. And I said, your hand wasn't straight forward. It was blocking. And because
so
it was
popped back.
When it was blocking, the person's hand got over and poked him right in the eye. So now do it like this.
Right.
But the person easily could have just gotten mad and started beating the other person up. right? But then they're missing the opportunity to go, well, I mean, I didn't lose my eye. So what happened? What did I do wrong? And then you try to change it.
So that brings in another, I think, psychological development or technique, which is self-reflection. You hit on it with Yates's commentary, but it sounds like, we've got resiliency, building your internal power, but also another technique for doing that is being able to look at what happened and evaluate it without an ego interfering.
And that's the hardest thing to do, because when someone tells you you're wrong, your first desire or your first action is to resist.
Right.
And when you resist, that's your ego resisting. If someone said, hey, you could do it better, and you go, oh, show me. Oh, and then you can take it inside, reflect upon it, and go, nah,
doesn't work.
That doesn't work. That person's not telling you being honest. Yeah. But if you have that humility, you might hear something and go, what was that? I heard that. Oh. And then you can change, right? And that's the hardest part, is to create the opportunity to change. Success does not create the opportunity. Failure creates opportunity.
The other thing I was thinking, when we're talking about the dynamic of the person-on-person practice, is that the times when the uke, maybe for ego reasons, tries to resist the technique and not using the ukemi practice as the opportunity to learn the technique. I was curious what you think about that, because that happens in class.
But why do they, let's just take malice or willfulness off the table.
Okay.
Then they're resisting out of fear.
Right.
Right?
For self-protection.
Yeah, I don't want to get poked in the eye again, so I'm going to
hold on really hard. Yeah.
Or punch that person's ticket, and then so that they don't do it again to me. Right? But really, if you think about it, I was in the wrong position. Okay, what? And then, the teacher said to do this. Okay, what does that mean? And you're reflecting upon it. Okay, and then you're trying to find your way out.
So, do you think that to be a successful martial artist, not just Aikidoist, you have to have the right understanding of your ego?
I mean, you do, because the thing is that if you don't know you have a problem, your ego has a problem, you can't change it.
Right.
Right. And so that's why success, with success comes hubris.
Right.
Because the hubris has to come there, because there has to be something to make you humble. And so then the universe, God, Yahweh, whoever trips you, and then you go, oh yeah, I shouldn't be like that. And then you can say you're sorry, you can change, but your ego has to be able to take. Interestingly, like Free Sensei never used to say reprimand. He never used to say, "I'm giving you," when he is talking to you on the mat. He always said correction.
Interesting.
Right, correction has no negative or positive charge. It's just a correction.
Right.
But what happens is we take that as a criticism.
Even though what he's saying is it's empty of moral judgment in a sense.
From his point of view, right? So you think this person's criticizing me. But no, that person is supposed to be correcting you. You come here to learn, you're being corrected.
It's a subtle difference.
It's a mind shift.
Right.
Right? Because remember, everything is a mind game. Your mind game says, oh no, he's trying to trick me, so I'm going to resist. Or your mind game says, he's trying to help me, so I'm going to listen.
Interesting. And he didn't give out a lot of corrections in class.
Well, it depended on who you were, that he gave corrections or not gave corrections. Like some people he corrected a lot.
Right.
Some people it was all over like a bad suit, right? But like for me, he did not correct me that often.
Yeah.
But I was really good at listening
and watching
and taking other people's corrections as my own.
That's a really good point, which is if you're paying attention in class and the teacher's like, more back foot, better posture, whatever it is, in some sense the comment is for everybody, right?
It should be.
Yeah.
If you're smart, because for me, I didn't get a lot of personalized correction. So then I spent a lot of time stealing it.
Yeah.
That Nusumi Keiko, right? And then you sit back and you go, oh, I heard that. I'm stealing it for myself. But if you just go, he wasn't talking to me.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm fine, or I'm glad he didn't say that to me, or he's obviously not talking to me because I'm doing that technique.
Although he could be pretty forceful in his corrections sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, for me, like one time I was at this bar with some Aikido people, and this guy came up to the table and started talking to us. And one of the students knew him. And then the guy sat down and he was talking about Aikido and whatnot. And I said, "Oh, you do Aikido? You should come to our dojo." And our mutual friend said, he used to come to our dojo. Oh. And I said, "You used to go to our dojo?" And the guy looked at me deadpan and goes, "Yeah, I used to go to the dojo and I left because of you."
Wow.
He pointed in my face.
And then you didn't remember him.
I don't remember. Well, I after that I went, "Oh yeah, that's that guy." And he was kind of, I remember him being kind of a jerk. He thought because he studied Aikido in Japan that he was better than us.
Right.
And he had like an attitude problem. And so we pounded this dude, or maybe not I pounded this guy, right?
Right.
So then at the bar, he proceeds to tell me what my problem is. "You're like this. You don't do real Aikido. I did Aikido in Japan, and I would go out to the forest and do Aikido by myself." And it's just like, but he's like telling me all these things.
Yeah.
At first blush, I was like, kill this dude. Just start beating him up. But then I said to myself, wait.
There's a message?
Maybe there's a message here, something I can use to improve my ability. So I just sat there and took it. And and I don't necessarily think there was anything he was saying that I could use, right? Because
it was just the process.
But having the desire to sit with uncomfortableness, sit with this person criticizing you about this, you're a bad person, you're this thing, and you don't, and I just sat there, and then, part of me goes, just kick him outside and kick his butt. Right.
I think you're bringing up a super interesting point, which is, again, it's a psychological thing. When you say that a lot of what's an impediment to our development is fear. Fear is an emotion as opposed to a thought.
Right.
And what you just described in the bar was also, in some sense, an emotional interaction, because you had like an immediate like emotional reaction to being trash talked by this guy, and you could have taken one or two options, which is one would be to listen to the negative emotion inside yourself, pound the guy in the parking lot, get the win, versus like being able to sit with the emotional conflict and develop out of it. Like, to me, that's a very high level development skill, because we all have emotions. We all have ups and downs. But when you're confronted with something that's negative, to be able to like turn that around is a highly developed skill.
Maybe. I don't know if it was that developed for me. I just trying desperately to improve, right? And then for someone to give you a candid review.
Right.
Right. We're not talking about what people write on these comments on this podcast or other videos. You suck. That's not constructive. But maybe, just maybe, someone gives you something constructive, a nugget, and then you go, wait a second. Or you look for the pattern. He's not the first person that's ever said that to me. And then you find something which you can iron out of your personality, which is holding you back.
Yeah. Well, I think why I called it a high level skill is, we're a therapy society where we're always trying to analyze, grow from, deal with our emotions. And I think that, maybe one of the things that self-development fueled by failure is emotional regulation in a way, which I don't know. I'm throwing that out there as a proposition, but it seems to me like you have to have emotional regulation to self-develop, because, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, the normal reaction to failure is depression, even if it's very localized depression.
Yeah.
Or self-judgment. And to be able to regulate that emotion is part of self-development, it seems to me.
Well, it's in that moment of failure that you don't go to that desperate place.
Right.
Right? That's the self-esteem. You lost,
You're bad.
The wall's broken, you're a bad person. That's when Stella goes back to the island and gets her groove back, and then you got to come back, yeah, I'm ready to do this thing. But Aikido's about self-compassion. So in that moment, you go, well, I didn't win, but I still scored 30 points. I still did this. I feel good about these aspects of the game. even though we didn't win. So you talk yourself out of that emotional response of, I'm a bad person, and you start punching yourself in the face to, oh.
So there's this, I don't watch a lot of sports, but there's this one podcast I saw where they were talking about Michael Jordan's mentality as a champion. And I forget the name of the other player, but here's what it was. They were telling this story about how the Bulls were playing the Utah Jazz after they had beat the Utah Jazz the previous season. And so Michael Jordan really wanted to put the hurt on these guys to like reinforce that they were better. So he said to this one player who was the center, and he said, look, we're going to feed you the ball in the first quarter. And if you score like 20 points in the first quarter, we'll dominate them from the inside and we'll psychologically break them down. So here's what happened. He feeds them the ball. He goes up, he scores like 18 points the first quarter. And Michael Jordan goes up to him in the break after the first quarter and says, man, you're doing exactly the game plan. You're doing fantastic. So great. And then the guy didn't score another point for the last 3 quarters. And after the game, Michael Jordan's like, I am never going to give you a compliment until the game is over.
That is a method. In class, sometimes I'll say, oh, just do it like that. And then the person will go, what? And then it's all gone.
Yeah.
Or I'll say, continue to do that. Or I'll stop them and say, that was a really good throw. And then they can't do it again.
It's instructive, right?
No, it's what I was yelling at the instructors about in the instructors meeting. It's about subconscious versus conscious mindsets. A conscious mindset can only take in 50 bits of information per second. A subconscious mindset can take in 20 million bits per second. So the moment you stop to talk to them, hey, you're doing a great job. You broke the flow. And then you broke the flow in their mind. They can't get it back because it is very difficult to get back in a flow state.
So that sort of maybe suggests that, for a practice, not rule, but let's say algorithm is to not make a lot of comments at all.
That's what I was reprimanding all the teachers in the instructors meeting before this podcast.
Was talking too much.
Do not talk. Move more than talk. But our egos want to talk. Our ego says, no, I am good. I am, look, listen, everybody.
Listen to me.
I have value. I am somebody. But then you have to really sit back. Can they understand what you're saying?
In the moment, especially.
In the moment, do they have did you qualify them? This person can understand this. This person can do this. Then that's why I'm going to give it to them. Or are you just talking so that people will think that you're smart?
Right.
Right. And even for me, like I have to spend all this time in class going, closing my mouth.
Like self-disciplining yourself. Yeah.
Because I want to say stuff too. I want to be funny. I want to do this thing. Right. And so it's very difficult for people to do because you want to be liked. You want to be thought of as skillful. You want all these things.
Everybody does.
All these things about you. So then in that moment, you're going to talk. You try to be funny. You're going to say something risque. You're going to do something. And then that person's not going to learn anything because they had to stop.
Listen to you.
Come into conscious programming and listen to you. They say multitasking, it takes 12 minutes to get back
to the original
back
task.
Into the flow.
Yeah.
And how long's the class? 60 minutes, right? If you interrupt them 5 times, never getting back into it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is like trying to understand this idea of if you had the choice to win or lose, what would you choose?
Everyone would say win.
Right, because our egos are fed by winning.
Right.
I won the lottery. I won the girl. I won the guy. I won the thing.
Right.
But failure teaches you something about yourself. If anything, it teaches you how you deal with setbacks. You trashed your hotel room because you didn't win. Or you trashed your hotel room because you won. That you go, oh, that thing. And, if you think about like high level athlete, like at one time, Mike Tyson, he's the greatest boxer of all time. And, the ultimate heavyweight champion. And then he couldn't be told no. Right.
Then he ended up going to jail.
Yeah. And, how he went to jail was not being smart about how to handle his legal affairs.
Yeah.
right?
Although I did hear him in a recent interview where he said that he learned more from the 3 years he was in prison than all his training.
Yeah, and he said, I loved it. I loved being in prison. There was this structure that he never had in his life.
Yeah.
Right. So getting to this idea, like failure, setbacks.
But that's a pretty big statement for someone who arguably is the strongest puncher in the history of boxing to say, when I was constricted, when I was in this negative place.
Yeah, because he wasn't allowed to fight. He said he never wanted to fight.
Yeah, I've read that.
He would cry before
every fight
because he was afraid. And then here he is, this just super destructive person. Right. But that's that thing, like setbacks, mistakes, failures, they teach us things about ourselves. You find how did you develop your footwork? Oh, because I lost. How did you develop that shot? Because I was losing.
Yeah, and the other thing I think of, that you and I have talked about this idea many times, which is you don't know whether something that's happened is good or bad, maybe for 5, 10, 20 years.
Right.
Like you can't, like if you judge a particular outcome at the moment, it has some validity, but the long-term knock-on effects of that event in your life may not fully materialize for decades.
Yeah, that's the story of Tenkan. Tenkan Kokyuho, that is the
long-term technique.
The quintessential understanding and idea of teaching people Tenkan. Here's this thing that you have to develop, which you think has no martial purpose, only to develop it and go, 10 years later.
20 years later.
20 years later. Hopefully not 20, but yeah.
But a while.
You put all these reps on this technique the whole time on faith. That everybody here is good. They say to do this. Oh, Sensei says to do this. Everybody says to do it. I'll do it. And then you do it for 10 or 20 years. And then finally the secret is revealed to you. Go, yes, I understand now.
Isn't also Ariminage Tenkan style also talked about as a 20-year technique?
Yeah, but I mean, like that one doesn't feed your that one feeds your ego more than Tenkan,
because you're throwing someone at the
end.
end.
Tenkan,
there's nothing.
Just the act of hitting a Tenkan.
There's no outcome.
There's no outcome. There's no reward. You're just doing it and doing it and doing it until someday you're really good at doing it, and then now people can't jam you, and oh wow, this is pretty good. But it took you that long to develop it. It's like the ultimate ego smasher, because you can't have an ego and do it. You have to let go of your ego.
But that's hard for a lot of martial artists, or maybe for all martial artists, because when you start martial arts, you often have an end point, whether it's black belt or martial effectiveness, but people often start. I mean, I know I started martial arts to get an end point.
Well, why do most people do martial arts?
To protect themselves.
To become effective at the art of fighting.
Right.
Right. So why do you need to fight? Because I'm afraid.
Right.
Why do you need to fight? Because this guy keeps beating me up.
Right.
Why do you need to fight? There's something out there that drives you, because it's not good enough just to do martial arts just to do it.
Right.
Just to do Aikido to do it. So you think, that old joke, the guy comes and kicks sand in your face at the beach. You want to be able to take care of him.
Right.
Right. And then you think, is that what martial arts is all about? It's funny. There's a story. There used to be this student named Alex. And, he's just some dude who did Aikido here. I didn't think much of him. He's kind of skinny. There's nothing. You look at him, you think this guy's probably $110 wet. There's nothing. You look at him, you think this guy's scary.
Right. He's not intimidating.
Not to me at all. We used to beat him up all the time. And I was working in Little Tokyo, and I saw him, and I gave him like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And then he said hello. And then after he left, the person I was working with said, "Dude, do you know that guy?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Dude, that guy's a hardcore gangbanger. He'll kill you." And I started laughing, and I was like, "Alex, kill you?" He goes, "Yeah, man, he's crazy." I go, "Crazy?" I go, "We beat that guy up like 20 times a night." And then it turns out he was this hardcore gangbanger
wow.
And dude, he was so skinny, but because he was a bit crazy, he
had aggression.
Yeah. People feared him. And I was like, we beat him up every day. I go, that guy has he don't flex on us with any attitude in the dojo, But then you go around town and here he is like this
intimidator,
intimidating gangbanger. And I was like, that guy? And then, of course, like maybe a year or two later, he was shot and killed in a drive-by. And like you go, oh. But yeah, I mean, all these people were instantly afraid of him. And I was like, we beat that guy up like every day. So, I mean, like that's the funny thing. It's just you think about, why do you study a martial art, right? We study a martial art because we want to defend ourselves. Why do we want to defend yourself? Because we're afraid because of this thing. And so everything has to be effective, right? It has to be good because I might have to use this. So I got to be able to do it, right? Is Shihonage? Which one would you do? Which would be your go-to technique if someone attacked you? Shihonage? Iriminage? You got to tell me because I got to work on that technique because I'm afraid inside. And then you go, oh, nothing to be afraid of because training gives you this confidence. But where do you get the confidence from? Falling down and
every class
and getting back up every class. And then once you do that, you go, oh, resiliency is the true strength, not big biceps, not a strong iriminage, the ability to get back up. Why is it that every horror movie, the scariest thing is when they just killed the villain or monster.
He comes back.
And you're walking, and then in the darkness, you see the person stand up. Oh, right? Because it's like the Terminator.
And understand that Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
You can't bargain with it. You can't, it will kill you. That's its only job. And then that frightens you.
Right.
And so you need to be able to defend yourself. But, as we digress a little bit, but like, that's the thing that you can't learn that by winning, because winning, there's a huge component of luck in winning.
Do you think, like Western society, does pivot around this? I mean, are there people outside the Aikido community that are teaching these lessons that resonate with you?
I don't know, because our society is all about doing more, wake up early, lift weights, do this thing, win. You got to be this person. And you really think about, like, where's the compassion? Where's this, you wake up and you say, I'm tired. No, get up, wimp. Okay, I better get up.
Well, I think an interesting aspect of the compassion component is, yes, you have self-compassion, but by experiencing your own failure, you're warmer, more compassionate to other people, because people need more support when they've had something go wrong.
Well, but that's that understanding of that heroes and villains share the same backstory, right? I think it's the book called Hero on a Journey, something like that. That heroes and villains share the same backstory.
Villains and heroes actually have the exact same backstory. The villain story and the backstory of the hero are pain. Remember I said the hero's an orphan?
Yes.
The hero's almost always an orphan in some way. They're orphaned. The villain, if you'll watch the movie closely, screenwriters will put a scar on their face, a limp, some sort of speech impediment. What they're indicating is that this person has a painful backstory. So the difference between the villain and the hero is one thing. It's how they respond to pain.
Because they were abandoned also.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the villain says, the world hurt me, I'm going to hurt it back. And the hero says, the world hurt me, I'm not going to let this happen to anybody else.
Wow.
It's just literally how you decide to react to pain that causes you to be the villain or the victim.
But the hero and the villain share the same backstory. So that's this idea that because I want to succeed because it feeds my ego, it makes people think highly of me. If I fail, people will make fun of me, scorn me, and they won't love me. But you realize no one really loves you anyways. all the accolades and the hangers on and everyone patting your back because you win, will they be consoling you when you lose?
Right. Will they be there?
Most of them won't be, right? Because everybody wants to attach themselves to the winner.
Right.
Mike Tyson's about to fight Jake Paul in a couple of months. Mike Tyson's about to turn 60. I mean, he might beat him, but he also might get really hurt.
Yeah, he might get hurt.
And that, if you remember Tyson about maybe a couple of years ago, he said, I never want to fight again. And, it makes me a bad person and all these things. And here he is, and like his payout's supposed to be like $20 million for the fight. But like, he's going to risk everything. Yeah. He could get hit really hard.
Unless, of course, it's fixed.
Or it's fixed, which it might be. But that's the whole thing. But he's just doing it for the money. Not because he loves boxing or do something. It's the money.
And yet, even at 58 or 59, whatever he is, there's still that element. You hear people talk about it, that he's fear-inspiring.
He is, but, there's this whole thing called a lucky shot, lucky punch. That lucky punch is the thing that you get hit, it's over. And then all for what? Money.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're lying in bed all messed up and you think, would I have done this again for $20 million? And you think, no way. But because in that thing, ego, money, you're the best.
And money really is the sort of stand-in score counter in our society, right? I mean, you don't hear people talk. I mean, you do, but you don't hear as much about, as you say, compassion, giving to other people when they're down, understanding what it means to be down because you've been down.
That's all those things that failure teaches you. It teaches you humility. Failure reminds you what it's like to be the person who just started Aikido. Right. And then that person who's struggling when they just started, you're a bit kinder because you remember what it was like to start yourself because you failed.
I saw this also. It was another martial arts podcast. I don't think it was Aikido. It might have been Taekwondo or Karate. And they were doing this really interesting comparison. I thought it was fascinating. They said, let's say you take 100 people that start as a white belt in Karate. They said by the time you get to their second or third rank, 75% of the people have quit.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the fourth rank, 85% has quit. By the time you get to black belt, like 95% have quit.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. I think that's applicable to all martial arts.
Yeah, because the thing is that if you, how much do you want to live the way of Aikido? I'm gonna come to the dojo 3 times a week for the rest of my life. That sounds like a long time, right? And then the way our society is structured today, rarely do you get the opportunity to throw hands with someone.
Right.
So then
which is a good thing.
Yeah, which is a good thing. But then you're spending all this time. But if I told you it would take forever, you wouldn't do it. If I told you this is a great self-development tool, maybe you would do it.
Or maybe not.
But how many people really want to improve the quality of their lives?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought was interesting about the rank analysis, which was like those early years, you're having more failure than success. And to be able to accept that failure, to keep it the art, whatever the art is, that's resiliency in many ways.
But that's how many people are truly resilient. When the car flips over and you have to climb up at an embankment with a broken leg to save your family, how many people could do it? Or how many people just go, I can't make it, and then they give up?
But part of the ability to do that is incrementally facing overwhelming challenge.
Right. And so today you have to ask yourself, how do I, me as a parent, how do I introduce failure and obstacles which don't break my children?
Right. Because breaking is as bad also.
Yeah. You push them too far and then they're broken. And then, like they're talking about like the special operations units. Sometimes when something in your mind breaks, the look in your eye changes. And then you could never get it back. I think they call it 1,000-mile stare or something like that.
Yeah, the 1,000-yard stare.
And so you get into this place where now to make your son a man, you beat him up, you did all these things. But you don't realize that it could destroy them internally, right? And so that's trying to understand like how do we introduce a healthy amount of failure which doesn't destroy the participant.
I think I was just thinking of like in Aikido, like rank testing. I think society looks at rank testing. People expect to get their rank.
Right, because they're just trying to climb the ladder. We had this one student here that he was just trying to get the black belt as fast as he can, and he was trying to get the second degree, third degree, fourth degree, and then when he got to a place where he couldn't jump the line, he quit.
Yeah.
Right, but like that's that thing today. That's why Aikido is this really great self-development tool, because the failure is hidden in the ukemi.
Right.
So when you're thrown down, that on a certain level, you failed your attack. Your attack was thwarted by the nage, and you got thrown down. So that every time you get up, you're teaching yourself this resiliency, right? And then so Aikido is just a metaphor. So then that's why I say it's the greatest self-development tool. If you could only see it as such,
which is hard. It's
hard because you have to get on your feet first, and that takes 3 months of a decent effort for 3 months. But if you can get on your feet, then you can use what you learn in Aikido to do anything, to achieve any goal. You just apply that same resiliency
over and over again. And you've been thrown down so many times, you're used to being thrown down. So when you go in there, you think, what's the worst that could happen at this job interview? Can they throw me down like Bill? Yeah.
No.
Not so bad.
Yeah, it's not so bad. Will they yell at me as much as Furu Sensei? No. Well, that's not too bad, right?
Yeah.
You know, and like to get to this place where you're not desensitized to failure, but it didn't be failure. The failure did not
destroy
become.
You.
It didn't destroy you, but it did not become personal.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that.
You go, oh, I'm a bad person. They won, I lost. I'm a bad person. I didn't get the girl. They won, I lost. I'm a bad person, right? Everything is about this being a bad person, and so you think it just wasn't for me. She wasn't going to be the one anyways. Oh, that resiliency. Well, maybe there's someone else out there.
Jocko Willink had this really interesting interview. They were talking about romantic failures, and he said, in his sort of pithy, punching style, he's like, learn from it and move on.
Right, but see, that's just a epitaph. That's just a thing that people say, hey, move on, man. You think you have to be in a place where you go, yes, you're right, Jocko. Forget that person and move on.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why a lot of these things that people are saying today in the world of self-development, wake up early, stay up late, work harder, section your day off so that there's 3 or 4 different days in one day, and you work harder, sleep less, sleep more,
eat right,
go, do a cold plunge, do all these different things, right? But like, if you already have it within you, you don't need those things,
right?
So people just saying that, right? Forget it and move on. I mean, that's easy to say, but when it comes to you, you have to bow your head and go, oh.
Yeah.
And that's where Aikido comes from, where this idea of you're not only get it thrown down, you're going to say onigaishimasu, which means please do it again.
Right.
And then more and more, you develop that resiliency that...
Well, we certainly don't say move on in the same way, but there is a lesson in that, right? Which is like you practice with someone until the teacher says change, and then... You can't, at the moment, you can't do a lot of reflection. You have to go to the next partner.
Right.
You have to get through class.
You have to let go.
Right.
Or, well, sometimes you just take it to the next partner, and then you went from a 6'6" dude to a
5'1",
5'1" little person, and you start beating them up, and you go, yeah, how do you like it, buddy? But there's all these lessons to be learned, right? And that you go, oh, resiliency, learn to let go, learning to go with the flow. That you're learning in Aikido training that majority of them come from this idea of failure. But if we just take this idea of failure one step farther and we don't make it personal, it's just this guy throwing you down, this girl throwing you down, and you hit your head, you got to get up, you hit your head, you get up, and then you start tucking your head like the teacher told you because you don't want to hit your head anymore.
Right.
And that's kind of the fun thing about the way we do Aikido, which is you have to change partners every technique. If let's say you go to a dojo where they don't change the partners, then you just got your buddy the whole time, and then you and your buddy just screw around, right? Or you got this person who's way below your level, so now you have to take it easy on them.
Right.
But it's more egalitarian if we change partners every time, so that you don't get stuck with the short stick, which is either the big person that's pounding you or the real small person you have to take it easy on.
Right. And there's also the element of when you train with more people, you train with different body styles, different distances. There's technical value for practicing with everyone in the dojo.
Right, because they become archetypes. When that person's coming at you on the street, you go, oh, Bill D'Angelo.
Right, or Ito Sensei.
You go, oh, Mike, yeah. And then you know how to deal with them.
Right.
Because they become archetypes. But that's the thing, is like, if you really could see failure as the stepping stones to success, or failure is what teaches us success, you're not going to take it personal. You're going to laugh. That's why, like, you ever see in the martial arts movie when they threaten like the teacher and the teacher always laughs?
Yeah.
It's a very common thing. They go, ha, ha, ha. The reason why they laugh is because they go, I was like that too.
Right. It's understanding.
Yeah. And then they just laugh about it. But if you get to this place where everything that's done to you is personal, your boss scolds you, personal. The teacher scolds you, personal. My wife scolds me, personal. The IRS scolds me, it's personal.
And then you either develop a self-defeatist attitude or you become revenge-focused.
Right. But if you could see it as not personal, it's just the thing that happened.
Yeah. Most stuff in life is not personal.
Right. So if it's not personal, we can use it as a teaching tool.
Yeah.
And failure becomes success.
How does that translate into teaching in the dojo?
You got to learn to let go.
Yeah.
You look at people and you go, not ready yet. You give them a correction. They don't take it.
Not ready.
You just think, not ready yet.
Yeah.
But if you go, aren't you listening? Don't you hear? Do you see the words that are coming out of my mouth? And you start beating them up and yelling at them. Right? It's to have that. It's to understand that. Let them be where they are and try to draw them to you, and in hopes that they're going to try to jump on the bandwagon and ride that thing to mastery.
Do you have any specific memory of a failure that at first you weren't able to internalize, but then looking back on it later, you're like, damn, that was a pivotal moment for me?
No, I mean, I got forced out of my job of 18 years. And, you're mad because this person forced you out of this job that you could have
was valuable for you.
Could have stayed at my whole life. And then now you look back on it, you go, you know what? That person did me a favor, because I probably never would have left.
Right.
Had they not
pushed me.
Or I look at I look at Ruth Sensei and my parents the same way. If they didn't treat me the way they treated me, I would not become the person that I am today. But of course, when it was happening, you're like, what the hell? And you're all mad.
Yeah,
and
you're pissed off.
You're, holding a grudge against Sensei or my parents or something like that. But today I go, oh, the way they treated me made me who I am today. Thank you.
Right. Gratitude,
right? To understand this failure, it's not personal.
So is that like one of the last lessons of failure, is gratitude?
Maybe, right? Like letting go, maybe the last one, but gratitude is right up there, because if you cannot see how this thing factors in until this moment. And then until later on, and then you go, oh, that moment really helped me. This person quit our group, but it taught me boundaries.
Right.
This person who was my friend screwed me over. Oh, that taught me trust.
Right.
And you look at the failure with different eyes, because you try not to take it personal. You try to think, what can it teach me? How does it inform my situation today? Oh, I still do it. I got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
But like, that's the hard part of and anything that we do. There are two sides to every story. The success, yeah, this is great, I won. There's the failure, I lost, right? Neither should change how you feel. It's just like the weather. Oh, I won, it's sunny. I lost, it's rainy. Oh, it's just rain, it's just sun. But when we take it and we make it personal, yeah, I won because I am great. I lost because I'm a bad person. Right. And so that's the thing, is that failure teaches us so many more things than success ever will.
When did you have the insight about Aikido training as a self-development tool? When did you become aware of that? Because you've been doing Aikido now for 33 years?
34.
34 years.
I don't know. I mean, I've always been like this type of person, and I always try.
But you didn't have like an aha moment about Aikido, and you're like, oh wow, like this is a really good tool for self-development.
When I reflect back on myself in the last 5 years, I think, man, I've come a long way.
Right.
Wow. And I think, man, I don't think I ever could have done that without Aikido training. And you think, to be grateful for that thing, and that, it feels like all we do is lose. But if we can have more sober eyes, you can realize, oh man, there are all these lessons to be learned.
Besides Furi Sensei, were there any teachers either in Japan or here that, even if you didn't practice with them, just listening to them talk made you go, oh yeah, aha, like that totally makes sense?
Yes and no. Today I just really search for nuggets.
Yeah.
So I'll be watching some video about like pottery making in Japan, and then they'll talk about one thing and I'll go, oh, well, that's a very interesting thing. I was, David Ito Sensei, the sword polisher, was here maybe 10 years ago, and he was talking about emitting energy from the center of your palm. And then when we took him to Disneyland, I waited for this moment where we were alone, and I asked him about it. He started telling me all these crazy things about the transference of energy and all this stuff. And you're like, oh, that's very interesting. But I wouldn't call him my teacher.
Right.
Because today I just have the eye for understanding. Right, like you try to go, what? Wait, what was that? Did I hear something out the car
you're
window?
Constantly trying to learn.
Yeah, like what was that? And you try to pick up. How did I learn that? I learned that because my teacher and I would fight all the time, and he never corrected me directly, so I would have to steal the correction. And so now, when I'm driving down the street and I hear a song on the radio, I immediately go, "What is that song about? What are the lyrics? What is the
Right. What's the message?
Yeah. What's the message? And then try to take something from that.
I've been reading recently some very interesting articles about how people that are elementary school teachers or even high school teachers, where in the past you judge a student just on their test performance, and then they'd be ranked, right? The student gets ranked. But they're saying like that there is a recognition in the teaching community that learning from failure is an effective technique, but it's hard to implement it in schools. And I'm curious, like, what you think about that.
Well, it's because you're only with the student for a certain amount of time, and what they say can be misunderstood.
Right.
One time I told the student, you'll never be the chief instructor because we're the same age, but you can be a very good instructor, and you can help me find and develop the next generation for this dojo. He went away and said, oh, David said I could never be the teacher.
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. And I was like, but we're the same age. Of course you can never be the teacher. I outrank you by 5 ranks. We're not the same. We're the same age. There's 5 people ahead of you, so all 5 of us would have to die. No, you didn't hear what I was saying, that you have value and you could help me with this. Right? So that's the thing that the person has to be able to hear it or see it in order to take it in.
Right. We've had a pretty good range of discussion on this. I guess, getting near the end of the podcast, what would you want the message to be about failure to up-and-coming students or students of other martial arts that enjoy listening to the podcast? Like, what would your summation be for the value, the benefits of failure?
Failure, don't take failure personally. See it as an opportunity to change. If you can see it with sober eyes, not from a personal standpoint, you can use that failure to excel. In Aikido, falling down, right? It's a metaphor. Being thrown down, it's a metaphor.
Right.
It's a metaphor for life, that you can be thrown down really hard and still get back up. Failure teaches success.
I think it's a really good place to end. I think there's been a really good wide-ranging discussion.
Cool. Thank you for watching or listening. Don't forget to like or subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.